Crypto assets are not created equal, especially when it comes to something as controversial as USDC. As a part of today's video, I want to highlight the key differences between native USDC versus a bridge version provided by one of their many partners, including Wanchain, which is now deployed into Cardano. This has been a recent talking point within the Cardano community, so I want to go ahead and just put out an explainer to hopefully help you guys out here as a part of this video. Last but not least, I do have a nice little sit down which will be released on the channel with Temujin Louis, the VP of marketing from the Wanchain bridge, in which we break down everything that Wanchain provides, as well as just some talking points with respect to USDC. So make sure to stick around and enjoy the video. What is up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name is Fareed, and as I mentioned, as a part of today's video, I want to dive into the differences between native USDC as well as a bridge version of USDC. This has been a huge talking point here over the past couple of weeks on Cardano, with half of the community wanting to adopt something like USDC natively, and the fact that we have another half which would rather actually utilize something which is more homegrown in terms of a fiat-backed stablecoin like Mahen, which we're expecting to launch on March 16th. So without any further ado, let's just jump right on in and talk about what actually makes USDC native to a particular chain. If you guys aren't aware, USDC right now, I believe, is deployed on more than 15 chains altogether, with many more prospects on the horizon, again, with Cardano potentially being one of those prospects. So jumping right on in, the very first difference between a native version of USDC versus a bridge version is the fact that a native version will be issued by Circle, which is a regulated fintech company. On the opposite side of the spectrum, a bridged version of USDC will be minted by a third-party provider. If you guys head over to the official website for the Wanchain bridge, you can see about 10 to 15 different partners right now which have the ability to actually mint USDC. That includes Allbridge, Carrier, Chainport, Portal, Zai Finance, and Wanchain. A few here that I want to just quickly touch on include Chainport and Wanchain. So Chainport is one of the biggest bridging providers right now, directly supporting Cardano. We don't have USDT or USDC support coming in through Chainport into Cardano. However, we do have support for the following tokens, which include Cornucopias, Meld, Genius X, and World Mobile, as well as Paribus, to go ahead and name a few. Now, at the very bottom there, we've got Wanchain, which is actually one of the projects that brought over USDC very first into the Cardano ecosystem. In addition, they did also bring USDT and DAI, and we also now have the introduction of the WAN token, or their native governance token. We've also seen a couple of teams working with the Wanchain bridge from within Cardano in order to bridge their token into any of the other ecosystems that the Wanchain team is connected to. So I wanted to kick things off with that. Again, the fact that a native version of USDC is issued directly by Circle versus a bridge version being distributed by one of their third-party partners. The second key difference between both of those assets is the fact that a native version of USDC will always be backed by a dollar, and it will always be redeemable one for one. Now, on the opposite end here, when it comes to a bridge version of USDC, that will actually be backed by a native version of USDC locked away in a smart contract on a separate chain. So in order to simplify this, let's take, for example, Cardano, where we have the bridging of USDC by Wanchain into the ecosystem. So this USDC is essentially coming from another network. Let's assume Ethereum in this example, where it is minted natively on chain. That USDC is locked up in a smart contract on Ethereum, and then we have the Wanchain minting a wrapped version, which is then sent over as a Cardano native token on the network. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with a native version. That is always redeemable one for one against the US dollar, whereas the backing of a bridge version is actually backed by USDC that's native, locked in a smart contract on on a separate network. The third key point that I want to make here is the fact that native USDC will always be the official form of USDC on a given blockchain, whereas with a bridged version, because there can be many partners, you can experience fragmentation of liquidity as well as multiple versions of USDC wrapped on a single network. Again, keep in mind that right now we only have USDC on Cardano through Wanchain, but imagine if Chainport also brought over their own version of USDC under a separate policy ID. Technically, that could be doable, right? Because again, they're both technically allowed to be partners, which can distribute USDC. Again, this does create a little bit of fragmentation, whereas if you have one single chain where you only have the native version and no wrapped versions, that allows for you to have one single gigantic pool of liquidity. The very last thing I want to go ahead and just mention is going to be with respect to CCTP. So a native version of USDC will be supported by CCTP, which stands for their cross-chain transfer protocol. This is simply a native bridge, which allows for members that have USDC on one native chain to mint and burn and therefore retrieve their native USDC on a separate blockchain. So as an example, you could imagine if you have USDC on Ethereum, right, natively, and you want to move that over to Avalanche, where there's also a native version of USDC, you can go ahead and utilize the CCTP protocol or their Circle official bridge in order to basically burn your USDC on Ethereum and then mint an equivalent amount on the Avalanche or the network that you're transferring to. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, with respect to a bridge version of USDC, that will not be interoperable with the CCTP protocol. So do keep that in mind. Again, there is more information here surrounding CCTP on the official Circle website, which it states that CCTP enables USDC to flow natively across blockchains, unifying liquidity in Web3 and simplifying the user experience. Scrolling down just a little bit further, we have here where it states it's a permissionless on-chain utility that facilitates USDC transfers securely between blockchains via their native burning and minting mechanisms. So again, here's an example. We've got Ethereum where you can burn your USDC and then mint an equivalent amount on Base, or vice versa, depending on which chains USDC is supported on natively. I think that will do it there surrounding some of the key differences between the bridge version of USDC versus the native version. I want to just quickly highlight one last thing though, in which it states here on the official Circle website, interestingly, bridge forms of USDC play a key role in solving the quote-unquote cold start problem for generating activity on new blockchain networks. So this is one of the key points that I highlighted with my sit down with Temujin Louis, the VP of marketing from Wanchain. And this is just surrounding the fact that for any network that's looking to get adoption of a native version of USDC, they can actually kick things off with a bridged version. Now, it does appear that Circle looks at potential partners and how well they're leveraging bridged versions of USDC in order to gauge the interest and potential of them actually launching on those networks. Continuing on, it states that unlike native USDC, bridged forms of USDC can actually be spun up pretty quickly by new L1 and L2 rollup teams, in addition to third-party bridge deployers. Again, very clear example that we have here with the launching of Wanchain and the introduction of USDC in its wrapped form. Now, while bridged USDC is unofficial and not issued nor redeemable by Circle, it does serve as a proxy to USDC that's extensible to any ecosystem where bridging is made possible. So let me know what you guys think down below. Could Circle be waiting on the Cardano ecosystem to begin playing around with the existing forms of USDC that we have on the network before actually launching? If you guys missed my previous video where I talked to Charles Hoskinson and asked him about the state of USDC on Cardano, he highlighted two key things. The first was that this is not a issue, or that there aren't any issues with respect to engineering USDC here on Cardano. So in terms of the specific features that USDC or Circle needs in order to launch on a particular network, the IOG or IOG should be able to, from an engineering standpoint, accommodate Circle's needs. Very similarly, he also highlighted that this is not due to a lack of funding. So whether it's 10, 15, 20 million, the Cardano community should be able to put up those funds in order to adopt something like USDC natively. So what that kind of begs to me is, what is Circle waiting on, which might actually be some sort of hint, right? Or some sort of prospect that Cardano is actually utilizing the current versions that we have before actually gauging and dipping their toes all the way into the community. So let me know what you guys think. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to quickly end this video here with a brief snippet of my interview with Temujin. Again, this will be releasing within the next 24 hours. And on that note, if you guys enjoyed or just found any portion of today's video to be helpful, I would appreciate you if you guys could smash that like button. If it's your first time stopping by the channel, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions surrounding anything we chatted about, then make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below.
But I do have a lot of experience dealing with USDC and dealing with Circle. And also, I personally have worked in a lot of different types of blockchain related companies, both small, tiny, real startups, and also very large multinational corporations that are dipping their toe into blockchain. And, Circle is obviously a very successful, hugely successful company. They want to see some liquidity and some demand for USDC, even if it's in the form of bridged USDC, and take that into their calculus when they're deciding which chains to issue, native USDC on. It's not a simple pay-to-play situation anymore. I really doubt it. They themselves, talk about, they want to see not only the amount of bridged USDC on a chain, but also the growth rate over time to see that it is, gaining steam. Also, the number of dApps that are supporting the bridged USDC, and these are all things that they themselves are publicly saying that they'll take into consideration when deciding where to issue native USDC. But like I said, none of these things are guaranteed. This standard is for EVM chains only. Cardano, of course, is not a EVM chain, but it can give you insight into how a company like Circle is treating the decision-making process in terms of deciding where to issue native USDC. We have seen it play out also in the past. Various other chains have already done this type of transition, both using this standard and before the standard even occurred. So you were seeing a lot of things out there in the ecosystem that are showing that this is more than just empty promises or just going for a headline or anything like that. This is something that's being acted on actively by Circle when they are issuing USDC natively on different chains.